The Vaishnavas give another refutation of the Mayavadic conception. The Mayavadis say that we are the reflection of that Brahman. However, this is illogical. You can take the example of the sun. The sun, or something that is all-pervading, cannot be reflected in one particular place. Meaning that in the scriptures, the Para-Brahman, or Brahman itself, is described to be all-pervasive. So that which is supreme, or which is all-pervading, omnipresent, how can it be reflected in some place? Something that is all-pervading cannot be reflected. Something that is localized in one place can be reflected. But if something is all-pervading, sarva vyapnoti, Vishnu is described in scripture to be vyapnoti iti Vishnu. Vyapnoti means that which is all-pervasive. So if something is all-pervasive, how do you reflect it? So this Mayavadi description of the jivas being the reflection of the Absolute is actually an incomplete or illogical conclusion. This example, therefore, is inappropriate in all regards. It is not a proper description to show the connection between the Supreme Self and the individual spirit soul. This does not establish that the jiva is equal with God or one with God. So the Vaishnavas give this conclusion. Now, the Shrutis describe that the individual soul and the Supreme are like friendly birds sitting in the tree. There's a story that there are two birds within that tree of life. One is eating the fruits of the tree and one is witnessing, and they are friends. This is just given as a description of God and the soul, how God is the indwelling witness, or our conscience, Chaitya Guru. He is our conscience, He is the indwelling witness, and He is witnessing our activities while we are eating the fruits of our karma, our actions. Now, this eternal distinction is established that there's the difference between God and the self. At no point do we become one. The scriptures state, Brahmaivaham na sangsari, which means, I am of that divine spirit, and I do not belong to this world of birth and death. We are refugees here, and our destiny is to go to our transcendental home. That means that for the developed transcendentalist, we do not consider ourselves a product of the material nature, whereas we are actually of spirit. There is another verse, Aham eva kalu Brahma. I am of that transcendental spirit. This teaches that we, in the transcendental path, should give up our conception of material life and understand our true spiritual nature in relation to the supreme absolute truth. This does not mean that we are one with that supreme Brahman. Now, some Mayavadis say, if you meditate upon the Supreme, you will achieve that state of being the Supreme. And they give the example of a larva who supposedly meditates upon a bumblebee and becomes a bumblebee. But this example does not apply to the soul in God. Someone of weak intelligence, simply by meditating upon a genius, does not become a genius. I can sit and think all day long, oh, I am Einstein, I am Newton. But that does not make me Einstein or Newton. We may imitate their habits, we may follow their same daily regimen, but it's not going to make us them exactly. We may slightly increase our intelligence, for example, but it's not going to make us one with them. So, certain qualities of God, divine qualities, we can develop in our life through spiritual practice, but we can never achieve the full transcendental qualities of God. There are qualities of the Lord described in Scripture, and there are qualities that the jivas, the living entities, can achieve. But we can never achieve the complete supreme qualities of God. There are certain things that are beyond our grasp, no matter how much sadhana we perform. For example, in the Vedanta Sutra, Vyasadeva gives the verse, Karma kartri vyapadeshacha, which means that there are two performers of activities that are eternally distinct. In Sankaracharya's commentary of this Sutra aphorism, he says and admits that there is an eternal distinction between the individual souls and the Supreme Soul, the source of all. Sankaracharya even quotes a verse from the Upanishads. Guham pravisto, meaning the living entity, the individual soul, and the Paramatma Supreme Soul reside within the heart. Guham pravisto. And therefore, we should not think that I am that. Rather, we should think that I am of that supreme consciousness, and therefore my dharma is to be engaged in the loving worship or service. Similarly, when Sankaracharya comments on verses in the Gita, he also accepts that the individual souls are different from the Supreme Soul. For example, in Bhagavad Gita 1861 and Bhagavad Gita 1862, Sankaracharya says, the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's hearts, and He is directing the wanderings of the living entities. In this way, Sankaracharya accepts the conclusion that the jiva and God Himself are distinct. So therefore, even in Sankaracharya's own writings, we see that he counters the Mayavadi conception. Towards the end of his pastimes, Sankaracharya is famous for, quote, speaking this verse, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudamate, saying 3 times for emphasis, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, O fools. All of your, then he says, Samprapya Sannidhale Kale, that at the time of death, all your grammatical study and your philosophical study is not going to save you. Therefore, worship Lord Govinda. So why would he say worship Govinda if Govinda does not exist? If he has no form, or if you are that? There is no such thing as some one infinite being that we are all the same with. God will be God, we will be the jivas. That's never going to change. When one jiva transcends material life, they may develop some of the qualities that are divine qualities, but they will never become completely that supreme absolute truth. It's not possible. Now, in the scriptures, there are so many descriptions of Krishna, how he is self-effulgent, free of material contamination, eternal, supremely pure, all-pervading, all-knowing, the witness, the creator, maintainer, destroyer. We find no of those descriptions for the jiva. We never hear that the jiva is the creator, the maintainer, the destroyer, all-pervasive. So, the descriptions of the scripture of the Lord's nature are like thunderbolts striking the hearts of the Mayavadis. It is said that these descriptions of the scripture are like thunderbolts that strike the tree of the impersonalistic school of thought and burn it to ash. The Upanishads have so many statements. For example, Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahunamyo viradati kamam, which means that the Lord is the one eternal being amongst all the many eternal beings. He is the one among the many. Then chaitanas chaitananam, he is the one conscious being, the original conscious being among the myriad of unlimited conscious beings. Then again, more specifically, eko bahunam. Eko means one. Eko bahunam, of the many. Viradhati kamam. That Supreme Lord alone, that one Supreme Lord, will fulfill the desires of the living entities. And this can also refer to Krishna with the gopis, how he alone fulfills the desires of all his beloveds. In this way, the Upanishads establish the difference between the Lord and the living entities. There are so many verses like this in the scripture. So then how can we think that we are the same as that Supreme God? Jivatmano. There's another verse that means that there are two entities. The Supreme Lord and the living entity. The Mayavadis reject this and they say, no, we are all one. They say that, Jivatmano, this is saying that, this is just because of ignorance, Maya. Really, we're all just one. So it doesn't make any logical coherence. They say, this Jiva Atmana, it's like some kind of adjective that, the Jiva is like the adjective of God, modifying the noun, which is the Supreme. But this is not an intelligent interpretation. They say it is like interpreting like an adjective, like you can say the lotus is blue. But they try to say in that way that, the living entity is some kind of adjective of the noun, the Supreme Lord. But the Vaishnavas say that they're rejecting the clear meaning and using some kind of word jugglery. That's not proper. So in this way, there are so many arguments. For example, the Vedas say the phrase, Aham Brahma. They say there are 5 times of Brahma. Annamaya Brahma, Manomaya Brahma. Annamaya Brahma means Parabrahman in the presence of food grains. But what that means is that when those food grains are offered, the Lord spiritualizes them. So when we find the phrase Aham Brahmasmi, it means that when we are offered to the Absolute, in the stage of spiritual sharanagati, surrender, through bhakti yoga, we become spiritualized through this process. We become transcendental to matter. We become liberated. That's the proper understanding of Aham Brahmasmi. I, upon offering myself, then Anamaya Brahma, like I am that offering to the Supreme Lord. And when the Lord accepts me, then I become transcendentalized. I become spiritualized. There is a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Diksha kale bhakta kare atma samarpana se kale krishna tare kare atmasam se deha karitar chid anandamoy aprakrita deha tar charana bajai. Which means that at the time of spiritual initiation, diksha kale, which means, real diksha means the awakening of transcendental knowledge. When we achieve that transcendental knowledge, at that time, Krishna makes our bodies, he makes us transcendental. Se deha karitar chid anandamoy. At that time we become full of chid ananda, transcendental consciousness and bliss. And with that transcendental form, we are able to engage in loving pastimes with the Lord. Because if we are not in that transcendental state, we cannot perform pastimes with Him or serve Him in a loving way. Because the scriptures also say, Na deva devam arachayet. Without being on the divine platform, we cannot worship that which is divine. But nowhere does this mean or state that we are ourselves that same thing. Because otherwise, Krishna says in the Gita, Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitri vrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopimam. By worshipping the devas, you go to the devas. By worshipping the ancestors, you go to their planet of the ancestors. By worshipping material idols, you remained in material states. But by worshipping me, you come to me. Yad gatvan anivartante dhama paramamama. You come to my transcendental abode. So this is clearly described in all the scriptures. Therefore, we should not think that we can ever become Krishna. This is the greatest offense and the greatest form of ignorance. So, there are many different examples like this in the scripture that show that the individual living entities and the Supreme are distinct. If we are of a sincere desire to progress in spiritual life, we should accept this, and then we can fearlessly go forward on this path. So thank you for your time and for listening.